Hello my gorgeous lovely people, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of today's video, I'm going to be telling you about every single book I read in January. I'm super excited, so without further ado, let's get into this video. To start off the year, I read thrillers for a whole entire week. If you guys haven't seen that video, I do have a video on that. So go watch it if you want to see my review on the books more in depth and my reactions while reading them. You can find it there. So the first book that I finished this year, not even this month, this year, which is crazy that we're already in February by the time you guys are seeing this video, was The Coworker by Freida McFadden. I ended up rating this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Oh, JK. I ended up rating this book a 3.25 out of 5 stars. I absolutely flew through this book. I think I read it in like a day, or at least in less than 24 hours. And while I can't remember exactly what happened in it in my head now, I was loving my time while reading the book itself. So basically what it's about is you follow this girl named Natalie. She's like the main character of the book, and one of her co-workers named Dawn goes missing. And she tries to find out where Dawn is. She gets like this weird phone call sounding like Dawn being like, "Help me, like I need to be helped," or whatever. And Dawn was always seen as like a weird person in the workplace and stuff. So there's a bunch of side plots going on while you're reading this book, and I think it is really good and really fast paced. If you guys have ever read a Freida McFadden book, you know that she serves with fast paced, one sitting type books. And this was definitely one of them. If you want something that'll get you out of a reading slump, I feel like this will, because each chapter ends on its own little like cliffhanger or has a little piece in it where you're kind of like, wait, what? Which is usually all I can say when I'm reading thrillers is literally, wait, what? I don't understand. I will say that I was going to rate it 4 stars, but then the ending kind of ruined it for me. Wasn't a fan of the ending. The next book I finished this month in January was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. Again, this is in my thrillers video. I ended up rating this book 4 out of 5 stars. I think I'd knock it down to like a 3.75 out of 5 stars because I was reading this book and it was really boring in the beginning, and I feel like the beginning, like first half of the book could have been cut down by like a lot of pages. Like I feel like it could have been half shorter than what it was. I did enjoy my time while reading it, and I really wanted to know what happened, but also at the same time I was kind of like, where is this story going? And I felt like the main plot point of the story took such a long time to get to that it almost wasn't worth it. I could see if a lot of people DNF'd it before they got to like the good part of the book because it takes too long to get there. It is extremely dark and disgusting and just like that face, like, no thank you. Basically what it's about is this woman named Laurel, and Laurel has 3 children. Many years ago, her youngest child, Ellie, went missing and she was never found. Her remains were never found, nothing like that, like no closure at all. And then Laurel starts dating this other man named Floyd, and Floyd has a daughter that looks exactly like Ellie did, but the ages obviously don't match up, and you're kind of like, is this person like a time traveler or something? And there's just a whole bunch of creepiness that goes on within this book. And once you get to the gross part, you're like, no, thank you. Like I heard that this book was gross, and then when I was reading it, I was like, I don't understand. This isn't gross. This isn't really thrilling or anything. And then I got to that chapter. I think it was like part 2 or 3 because it's broken up into 5 parts. It was either part 2 or 3. I literally read the first sentence and I was like, sick to my stomach. 3.75 out of 5 stars, but I definitely would be careful if you're going in to read that book because it's yucky. Some of my girlies out here will be excited for this one. I finished A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I honestly can't really tell you obviously what the first book is about. If you don't know what A Court of Thorns and Roses is about by now or haven't heard of it, literally just go search up A Court of Thorns and Roses on TikTok and I'm sure they'll be able to describe it much better than I can. But basically it is considered the best fantasy romance series there is. It's the most hyped up romantasy series. I love it. I'm not even gonna lie, I love it. I started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses this past summer, but If you guys didn't know, I was in a huge book slump this summer, and I was like, okay, A Court of Thorns and Roses is gonna get me out of this book slump. I'm gonna do it. I started reading it, and it took me forever to read, and it was also one of my first fantasy books that I read, so maybe that was why, but the world building wasn't even hard. It was just me being in a reading slump and whatever, and I did enjoy it, but I was like, where's the hype coming from? And people were like, well, you have to get to A Court of Mist and Fury before you get into like the romance. And let me tell you, I was here for A Court of Mist and Fury. I actually listened to it on audiobook. I do consider audiobooks a form of reading. I still have the story in my mind and engraved in my soul. So audiobooks are reading. I know the story and could tell you word for word what it was. I just realized you can see all this grossness on my bed back here. Don't look at that, okay? But yeah, A Court of Mist and Fury is really where the romance stuff kicks off. I also really liked like the action and the little adventures that Feyre had to go on in this book. Feyre is the main character of this book, at least. I ended up rating it 5 out of 5 stars because what else was I gonna rate it? I absolutely loved it, and as I was listening to it, I would listen to it any chance I got. I would be like, have my Alexa, never mind. I would have her play it while I was getting ready. I would listen to it on my drives. I literally couldn't get enough of it. So I loved that. 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney, and I rated this a good 2 out of 5 stars. I honestly really didn't like this book at all. It's about this girl that goes into a coma, and while she's in the coma, she can hear everything that's going on around her, and she's like cognitively aware of everything. But leading up to her being in a coma, she was in a big accident, and you're kind of in her mind space and her trying to remember what happened to get her in this coma and why she's in the hospital, what the accident was surrounded by. So it sounds really interesting, but honestly, it was really boring. And I'm trying not to be mean, but books are so subjective. Yes, that's the word. Books are so subjective, and everyone has a different opinion on books, and I'm just sharing my opinion, so I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be mean, but I really didn't like this book. There was a really gross scene in this that I just don't think I like gross scenes. Like, some things just, I'm feeling sick to my stomach thinking about it. It was moving really slow, and it only had about 260 pages in it, so I thought I would be able to sit down in one sitting and fly through this book, and that was not the case. I was like forcing myself to finish it because I just didn't like it. It wasn't interesting. I didn't want to go on to the next chapters to find out what was happening. The plot twist wasn't really plot twisting, and I was just like, no thanks. And then we start off with my video that I read 200 pages every single day for an entire week. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch it if you want. So the first book I read in that video is The Right Move by Liz Tomford. I ended up rating this a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. It's about this pro basketball player named Ryan Shea. He's like one of the big book boyfriends that everyone talks about. So if you've heard him, he's from this book. And then it's about Indy. Indy goes through a breakup, and Ryan has an open apartment in his suite, so she goes and moves in, and then obviously a romance kicks off from there. There's multiple tropes in this book. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but kind of like enemies to lovers this book is, and best friend's brother trope is in here. It's just really good. I absolutely loved it. I love Ryan Shea. He's so cute and so good to Indy. I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars because I was like sitting there and I was loving my time while reading this book, but I wasn't getting like that 5-star feeling. Like, if you guys know, you get like this 5-star feeling like in your heart, and you're just like, I love this book. I love these characters. And while I did, it just was a solid 4 out of 5 stars. And I just don't really have an explanation for it other than I wasn't getting the 5-star feeling. And then I went on and read Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Of course, I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. Literally, how could I not? Coraline is my favorite movie of all time. In my opinion, Coraline the movie is a is a cinematic masterpiece. There is not a film out there that can beat Coraline. Like, there's so many hidden messages, so many I won't go off on my rant about the movie because obviously that's not what this video is about. And also I could talk about it for hours and you guys don't want that. You guys really don't want that. But I had to read the book because I found out there was a book before there was a movie for Coraline, and I just had to read it. I had to see if the book lived up to the hype of the movie or if the movie was lacking. And let me tell you, the movie was 10 times better than the book. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I didn't say that. I don't know who said that. If you don't know what Coraline's about, it's basically about this girl named Coraline. Could you believe that? And she basically lives at home and she's really, really upset with her parents. Like, she's just feels like she's there, like her parents don't really care about her is how she's feeling, but her parents are working towards their career. And so one day she goes through this door in this new house that they moved in, like this little tiny door. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen in a house or been in like an older house and there's like a door in the wall and it's like a passageway. Basically think of it as that. Coraline goes through this door and she gets in and she's in her same house and she's like, I'm literally in my house. I thought I just went through this passageway. And then she walks in and sees her mom, and her mom turns around and her mom has buttons in her eyes and it's super creepy. And she's like, hi, I'm the other mother. The other mother, she's basically trying to make Coraline believe that she's the better mother and to move to her world to sew buttons in her eyes and take her soul. I know, this is a kid's movie. It sounds really dark, and it is. And if you haven't seen the movie, please go watch it because it's so good. And then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver. I ended up rating this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Don't come for me, please. This was such a good book, and Flawless is part of the Chestnut Spring series. It's a very, very hyped up series. It's a cowboy romance series. A 3.75 stars is a really, really, really good rating, and I did really enjoy this book, but it's simply a romance book. It's nothing crazy in my opinion, and I'm really excited to see one of the brothers' books because the Chestnut Spring series is interconnected standalones. It's made up of interconnected standalones, so that means that each book follows different characters, but it's all in like the same world. And I'm really excited to see one of the characters' stories and his stories next, so I'm so excited. But anyways, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Flawless. Basically what this book is about, it's about Rhett, who is a famous bull rider. Like, he makes millions per year being a bull rider. And then he has this manager named Kip, and Kip has a daughter named Summer. You following me? So Rhett is basically ruining his reputation because he's going out and he's saying things in public that he shouldn't be saying as this big public figure that he is. So Kip, his manager, assigns Summer to be Rhett's babysitter. And what she's supposed to do is just keep an eye out on him in public and just make sure he doesn't do anything to ruin his reputation. And as you can assume, since this is a romance book, a little romance sparks up from there. There's the one bread trope in this. There's like enemies to lovers in this. He Falls First is in this. So cute. I love it. Oh, I have all the books sitting here and I'm just not holding them up. Next book I read was Allin by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I love this book. This is the third book in the Natural series by obviously Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Jennifer Lynn Barnes also wrote the Inheritance Game series. That's one of her more popular series, but the Natural series is also starting to get more hype. I tried to read the Inheritance Games a while ago and I couldn't get into it. It's the first book I ever DNF. And then I started the Naturals. So I was like, I liked her writing, I just didn't like the storyline. So good. This is the third book in that series and I ended up rating it a 5 out of 5 stars. Literally perfection. The Natural series is basically about a group of 5 kids and they have natural abilities that like the FBI would want. For example, one of the kids is really, really good at criminally profiling people. One's really good at like seeing emotions. One's really good at like detecting lies. One's super good at like doing math problems in their head. So all qualities and traits that the FBI would want, and their kids and their naturals at these things. So they start up a little program in the FBI and they start to solve cases. I love it. 5 out of 5 stars. I obviously can't really tell you what this book is about because it's the third in the series. So, and then I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I read so many good books this month, guys. I ended up rating this book a 4.75 out of 5 stars. And you might be like, Morgan, a 4.75 out of 5 stars? Are you kidding me? Just rate it 5 stars at that point. What is the 0.25 about? Because that's literally my only explanation. This book was so good. The only reason I am reading Caraval and like the Caraval series is because Stephanie Garber wrote Once Upon a Broken Heart series. That series is really, really, really hyped up and everyone says that it's super good, but you have to read the Caraval series before you go into the Once Upon a Broken Heart series because that series may ruin the endings for this series. I decided to pick this one up and I absolutely love it. Like, I'm so glad I read this and didn't just immediately go into Once Upon a Broken Heart because it was so, so good. So Caraval is basically like this game, and the game is run by a man named Legend, and nobody knows who Legend is. He's just like this magical being within this world. This book follows Scarlet, and Scarlet has been writing to Legend for so many years, trying to get into these games of Caraval. For her and her sister Scarlet, they've always wanted to go, and eventually she gets a letter back and gets invited to go play in Caraval. And while she's at Caraval, her sister Donatella goes missing. Like, somebody took her, and she believes it's Legend that took her. The whole story just goes from there. Caraval's a game of like twists and turns. They tell you like it's only a game, nothing in this game is real, just remember that. People go crazy all the time, and this world is just so unique and so amazing. It's so hard to describe, but I'm like picturing it in my head, and I just wish I could be transported into this world because it's just so, you know. So that's enough for me on this book. It was so good. I love it. I wish I could go back and erase my memory and just read it again for the first time because I love it so much. I also was thinking in my head, the Caraval series, especially this first one, would be such a good series or movie. Like, it would be so good. If you guys have read the Caraval series, let me know down below if you think it would be a really good series or movie. Then I read Legendary by Stephanie Garber. After I finished the first book of Caraval, it kind of ends off on a cliffhanger, so I immediately had to go into the second book in the series, which is Legendary. I obviously can't tell you much about this book either, but it follows basically the same premise as the first one. Caraval the game, Legend being the unknown guy, and who is Legend? Who is this guy? And this one I rated 4 out of 5 stars. It's a different POV than Scarlet's, and it took some getting used to for me because I absolutely loved Scarlet in the first book. It just took some getting used to. That is all the books that I read in January, 10 books total, which is absolutely crazy. It might be the most I've read in any month ever. As always, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff that you guys know how to do, and I will see you guys in the next one.